Hello everyone, this is Cary Valentine. I'm your instructor for VU 433, Building Organizational Climates at the Baker School of Professional and Graduate Studies. And tonight I'm coming to you via video and hopefully what seems like a more real and personal way. Here we're at the middle point of our class as of 10:30 p.m. here on Sunday night of week 3, October 13th, 2019. So here in about an hour and a half we'll be at the actual midpoint of our class. And so trying to get this information out and up to you for Monday morning of week 4 so you can see where we're going and hopefully get some orientation about where we're going to end up here in the next few weeks. Let's just do a little bit of review here really quick. I want to start here. If you recall in forum number 1, I asked you to compare and contrast the concepts of organizational culture and organizational climate. They're often kind of blended together when you see them in literature. And people have trouble distinguishing the two. And considering that this class is about organizational climate, it was really important to me that I make it clear to everybody what organizational climate is. Now, let's go back and just think about this. Organizational culture, that tends to be the beliefs, assumptions, values, ways of interacting that all kind of contribute to this unique social and psychological environment that we have in organizations or teams. A big thing to remember about culture is not something that changes right away. It's a lot like the American culture. You know, it's been forming over 200 years. We have different values, beliefs, assumptions, norms, things that we have going on that have been around for a long time. And so they're not going to change overnight, do they? That's something that everybody tends to know. We all kind of talk about how great it would be to change it, but it sort of kind of is. We're kind of just kind of a victim of it. We can do our best to kind of steer things in one direction or the other, but culture itself is kind of just more, it just kind of exists. We just kind of have to cope with it. So that's one thing that I want to be clear about. Same thing in organizations. Once it's in place, it kind of just is, and we just have to navigate it. Over time, it can change, but for the most part, that's not something you can hope to do right away. Whereas organizational climate is actually about perceptions of individual workers, and that's all. They kind of make these perceptions, or they interpret this stuff that they see based upon their own value judgment. Okay, and where does that come from? Well, it comes from their experience in the world. Their education level, their ethnic background, their cultural background, and all sorts of different things. I mean, your gender, that you identify with, that can often, we have a different experience based upon our gender. We'd like to think that's not the case, but that's the truth. We all see things and experience them in a different way. In fact, and then it gets even more specific. Every single individual human experiences things slightly different. We like to think we're all the same, but we're not. But there are some patterns, however, that we all tend to follow, and that's what organizational climate tends to kind of try to isolate and help us with. But again, it's dealing with perception. Perception is going on right now. Right now, you're probably perceiving me, and hopefully in a positive way. But so you're perceiving something in me that you're seeing on the screen. And so that's happening right now. So what does that mean? Well, that means that you can alter perceptions of other individuals or influence their perceptions immediately. You don't have to wait. You can really make changes and adjustments fast when you're talking about organizational climate. It's just something you just work with perceptions. That's what you're really trying to work with, and stick with that. Okay. So you also probably noticed in this class that I spend a lot of time asking you to use real world examples. In fact, even narrate those examples to me. Ideally, what you'll do is you will learn about something new, organizational climate. Learn about the patterns and everything that the science has investigated when they're talking about this particular concept, and see if those patterns somehow apply to experiences you've had in the past in some way. So ideally, you reflect on those and you think, well, this is what we did then. This is what I think, based upon what I've learned about organizational climate, I think maybe this is what we did right. Maybe this is what we did wrong. But in the end, your goal is to figure out what is the best thing to do in the future, to use the past to inform the future. That's what science does for us. That's what statistics does for us. We use inferences to actually help us to make better choices down the road, okay? So that affects us in pharmaceuticals and all sorts of different things. We use this evidence that we have from data from the past to help us make better choices, hopefully in the future. So that's a big thing to understand, okay? So, and then, I got you into motivation a little bit here. That was important because the biggest thing we've learned here, the most malleable and controllable determinant of organizational climate is indeed leadership, which comes via influence. And that leads to motivation. People get motivated. So I ask you to kind of go back and look in your past and talk about who motivated you the most, ideally from the workplace, but I give you some freedom to talk about anybody that motivated you the most. I want you just to kind of really get into that mindset of what motivation really is and how it kind of tends to create certain reactions in individuals that are affected by it. So affected by another's influence. So now some people say, well, that's really hard to understand, but I'll often use this explanation. I'll say, well, do you have a child that you ever tried to get them to clean their room? How did that go? Islam will say, well, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. It depends how much I can force them or nag at them, things like that. Okay. What would it be like if they just wanted to do it or saw the benefit of doing it and they just did it? Now that seems to a lot of people maybe crazy, that won't happen. But, actually science has shown that's really not that crazy at all. And you could do that. But it's kind of just like that. If somebody wants to do something, they're going to do it longer, they're going to do it better, they're going to do it with less supervision, and as science has shown, for less money. So that's motivation. So this class, in essence, is using this conceptual framework, a theoretical framework, organizational climate to help us to lead better. Now, does this apply just to administrators? No, it doesn't. And I'll be the first to say, middle managers, in my view anyway, are in the trenches of leadership and motivating others more than anyone else in organizations. That's what I think. And here's why I say that. It's simply kind of a numbers game to me, and a recognition of the limitations middle managers have these days on what they can actually control to get workers to do what they want, to get compliance out of them. Middle managers not so much don't have the control anymore over salary, perks, things like that. They kind of have a range they can work with, but they can't really go beyond that range. It's the same with perks and benefits, of course, too. Healthcare things. You can probably pick a benefit package that comes from a matrix of different packages maybe you can pick. But for the most part, those things are kind of set in place. So that middle manager, HR is kind of working with that, aren't they? So the middle manager is kind of working more with less with salary and things like that they control. And a lot more these days, they better learn how to do it with more influence, because they don't have that ability like they may have had in the past to adjust salary and perks and all those different things that easily. So to really get performance that goes beyond just what a worker has to do to keep their job, we have to move towards leadership and a little bit away from relying on the power you get from being an administrator or having some formal power bestowed upon you. So that's important to understand. Okay, so again, these administrators are seeking to influence worker level outcome or production or performance based upon interpersonal exchanges and less about money. That is what organizational climate as a concept is addressing, or directly targets this perceived mood of the work group actually in the end. So again, that led us to video, our form number 3, where I showed you a video vignette of a manager talking to a worker about their performance. And boy, she did a terrible job, didn't she? Oh my, it was horrible. I mean, if anything, that was a real lesson in demotivation, wasn't it? Yuck. She really used her power position and just really abused it in that way. She just insulted that guy. He's asking, honestly, I think, what do you think of my performance? What do I do right? What I may work on? I think he just wanted to know. And she just insults him, by the vagueness and the double talk and her lack of preparation. So again, that was a real lesson in how to demotivate somebody, not how to motivate people. And of course, again, how culture works is we have leadership practices usually, and in most cases it's the Baldwin leadership practices, which leads to a certain health or a certain type of climate, be it healthy or unhealthy, which can either lead to aroused motivation if it's a healthy climate, or aroused demotivation if it's an unhealthy climate that's being created, and either improve performance if it's healthy, or declining performance if it's not. So that's the progression, right? That's the equation. Okay. And of course, this doesn't just apply to the boss, if you recall. I mean, all of us can go there and reflect a certain mood when we go to our organizations and work, a certain attitude, and can alter the perception of others that work around us. And so that's important. If you really want to get to, even if you don't want to be an administrator, if you want people to cooperate with you, the type of attitude you emit is going to really make a difference on how they respond or react, okay, ideally. So that's why we want to be important about it. So if we're just using politics, a lot of people say, well, that's office politics and all this other stuff. Well, I personally don't want to break it down to that. I think it's more complex than that. You know, we often hear politics and we think of something that's kind of, again, corrupt and distorted. Of course, with all the media, we hear about different things and fighting that happens among parties and politics and everything else. We can often, of course, make that inference that it's about something that is about something maybe corrupt or impure. But so I don't want to think that. So I don't think really so much about politics. I really think it's about people just in general thinking about an attitude they want to admit and being authentic, right? And being aspiring trust. You know, trust, I always say this to people, you know, trust is something that takes a pattern of occurrences to create in a split second to cut all away, to take it all away. So that's an important thing. So we're building trust, and so that shows authenticity. That shows a person that repeatedly shows individuals that this is the kind of attitude I want to have. This is what I want to show to you. So that's an important thing to understand. So, okay, so we're going to move into Forum 4 here in a little bit, this coming week, and we're going to talk about the difference between a manager and a leader. They're both very necessary roles. I want to clarify that. I'm not bagging on management. I'm not saying this is all about leadership and this is all that warm, fuzzy, cool stuff about motivation and everything. I want to make sure we're clear on what managers do and what they have to do to keep things going and what leaders do and how people often, administrators, a lot of people now have to have dual roles. They have to kind of be able to do a little bit of both. And so kind of be both, have both skills to be able to work with people and to get the best results out. So that's an important thing. You'll learn about that in Forum 4. Okay, so Forum 5. Now we start to get into what's called, a conversation about ethical climates versus unethical climates. To start with, how many people here have heard of Bernie Madoff, or say Enron, Waste Management, and Tyco International? What I'm talking about is actually some of the biggest frauds in American corporate history. And if you don't, know of those, know of the situations that brought those to be included in my list of the biggest frauds in American corporate history, do some research, and you'll see what I'm talking about really, really quick. Okay, so here's what is interesting about ethical and unethical climates. A lot of people, when we see these big frauds exposed, like we saw with Madoff and Enron and these other places, we often, or at least the media anyway, tends to isolate the bad stuff to a certain group of people or one person. They're looking for a villain, right? They're looking for an easy way to label the problem to one person. But that's really not how it works. It doesn't work like that. Okay, it'd be convenient to do that, to say it's just one person, we can just purge them and everything's great. That's not how it works. Small frauds become big frauds because a lot of people are cut into the scam. That's the bottom line. Okay, so a lot of people are benefiting from it. That's how it gets big. So we like to think it's all these different things. So what can happen if, of course, we have a leader that's unethical, and that's the kind of climate that we're creating, an unhealthy, unethical climate, well then, how are we going to deal with that? To look at that and see what we can do to change that, to adjust that. In many cases, to save an organization where a lot of the people maybe were innocent, were going to lose their job because of maybe a few people or a chunk of people that were doing the wrong thing. So that's what's important to think about when we're talking about what an unethical climate versus an ethical climate looks like. Now, Forum 6 takes all this stuff we've kind of talked about with organizational climate and the different types of climate things we can influence, ethics and all these different things, puts it all kind of into this kind of melting pot of things. And we got to use all these newfound strategies to deal with these climate things that we want to address, and these things that we want to see if we can actually change perception when we move along. But then we're going to impact a problem with change usually. Humans just naturally tend to resist change. So I made that last forum discussion actually a little bit more easy, a little bit more free associating. So you won't see as much emphasis on looking for sources and a lot of research on that to support what you want to hear. You're gonna find that an easier conversation. Why do I do that? Is so that you can have an easier time working on that final paper that's due in the final week. So we all kind of want to work together in that way. So that's where we're at. That's where we're going in the coming weeks. So until then, as we're moving along, please contact me. I'm going to be putting up here probably on Monday or Tuesday. Be caught up pretty much all the grades, all the way up through at least the end of week 3. So look for those. And just contact me if you need any help or you have any questions, or if you need some special tutoring, we'll do a Zoom conference if you need that. I'm happy to do that all the time. And we'll make sure we get you to the finish line there. So have a great week and contact me again if you need any help. Take care. Bye.